The ceasefire between Israel and Iran appears to be in place as of Wednesday, despite a rocky start followed by the two sides' accusations over violating the deal. U.S. President Donald Trump hints the U.S. would strike again if Iran rebuilt its nuclear program. South Korea Wednesday marked the 75th anniversary of the outbreak of the Korean War. We have stories on efforts to remember and honor those who sacrificed their lives during the war. The number of babies born in South Korea rose at the fastest pace in April from a year earlier, driven by a rise in the number of marriages. A ceasefire between Israel and Iran appears to be holding up for now, putting an end to 12 days of violence, while the Trump administration suggests it'll hit Iranian nuclear sites again if Iran reconstructs them. Our Choi Soo-hyung leads us in with us tonight.
U.S. President Donald Trump warned that if Iran rebuilds its nuclear facilities, he will launch another attack. At a press conference in The Hague during a meeting with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte on Wednesday local time, he added that the strikes on Iran had set back its nuclear program by decades, saying that the facilities had been completely obliterated.
There's one building, but that's a building that sunk substantially into the granite, so that, the fire goes right over it. I believe it was total obliteration.
Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian said Tehran seeks nuclear energy rights for peaceful purposes, not weapons. Iran held 5 rounds of talks with the U.S. since April, but disagreements over uranium enrichment remained unresolved. But he said Iran was ready to restart talks with the U.S. within an international framework. However, recent U.S. strikes on key nuclear sites have weakened Iran's position, making a quick return to negotiations uncertain. Meanwhile, the war between Israel and Iran apparently ended on Wednesday after a 24-hour phased ceasefire announced by U.S. President Trump, though both sides traded minor attacks during the truce. President Trump gave a strong warning to both Israel and Iran, accusing them of violating the ceasefire. Israel and Iran both claimed victory in the conflict.
Dear citizens of Israel, during the 12 days of the Operation Rising Lion, we achieved a historic victory, and this victory will stand for generations.
Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz said on social media that Israel will respect the ceasefire as long as the other side does. Iranian President Pezeshkian said Tehran would only hit Israel if it violates the ceasefire deal. Military Chief of Staff Eyal Zamir said that Israel's military was shifting its focus back to Gaza. On Wednesday local time, an Israeli army tank operating in Gaza exploded, killing 7 soldiers. Choi Soo-hyung, Arirang News.
On this day, marking the 75th anniversary of the start of the Korean War, President Lee Jae Myung said the most solid security was possible through making peace at the state where fighting was no longer needed. And taking to his Facebook account, he added that the era of solely relying on military power was over. As he appreciated the sacrifices and devotion of all people, he vowed to seek various measures to better compensate those who made extraordinary sacrifices to defend the nation. Adding that security was key to the economy, he appreciated South Korea's rise from the ruins to become one of the world's top 10 economic powers. So, 75 years ago today, South Korea was invaded by North Korean and Chinese forces, triggering a brutal war that would draw in countries from around the world to come to its defense. We take a closer look at how far South Korea has come since then, from the ruins of war to a global defense power. For that, we have our lead foreign affairs correspondent, Oh Soo-young, here in studio. Good evening, Soo-young.
Good evening, Tommy.
So why don't we start with the whole 75 years ago event. Now, the outbreak of war that drew in more than 20 countries from the UN command. Let's start with that.
Right, Tammy. So it was an international coalition that came to the defense of South Korea at its darkest hour to defend its freedom and sovereignty. Among the 22 countries was the Netherlands, which dispatched over 5,000 volunteers to the south. Now their sacrifice was not only a defense of South Korea's territory, but of shared values that remain to this day. That's freedom, democracy, and the rule of law.
Of the more than 5,000 troops, we lost almost 125. I think, and we're still present today. We're still a member of UNC. We have personnel at UNC. And I think that's important because it shows our commitment to peace and stability on the Korean Peninsula. And why is that important? I think it's important because nowadays our security in the Euro-Atlantic region is so connected with security here in the Indo-Pacific region.
You know, the situation couldn't be more different today, but South Korea has managed to transform into a global defense powerhouse, right?
That's right, Hami. So South Korea's massive defense industry, it came from very humble beginnings following the Korean War. And well, with the threat of US troops withdrawals under the Nixon Doctrine in the 1970s, South Korea was triggered into action. In 1970, the government established the Agency for Defense Development and began reverse engineering small arms. And by the 1980s and 90s, South Korea was producing tanks, artillery, naval ships, and eventually aircraft. Now, defense exports remained relatively modest throughout the early 2000s, hovering around $1 to $2 billion annually. But the real breakthrough came in the 2020s. In 2021, defense exports reached $7.3 billion. Now, that figure more than doubled the following year, surging to $17.3 billion. Now, according to the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, South Korea now ranks as the world's 8th largest arms exporter, a position few would have imagined even a decade ago. Now, Korean weapons combine cutting-edge technology, tested reliability, very fast delivery, and lower prices, and all of this would make them highly attractive to buyers worldwide. And this was evident when Poland, facing growing security concerns after Russia's invasion of Ukraine, turned to South Korea for tanks, howitzers, and fighter jets.
Right. Now, Europe in particular seems to be seeking closer ties with Seoul on security matters.
Right, and this came at the height of the Ukraine crisis, where South Korea provided indirect support by supplying critical ammunition stocks to NATO countries, whilst simultaneously deepening bilateral partnerships with European nations, such as the United Kingdom, agreeing to co-develop quantum missile technology, for instance, and the Netherlands, of course, forging a very strategic partnership based on semiconductor production.
We mean a lot to each other as security partners, and that's in the field of defense cooperation, but also defense industry cooperation, in the field of cyber, maritime security, etc., etc. And one important area under the broader umbrella of security is also economic security.
With NATO as a whole, Seoul forged a tailored partnership in 2023, agreeing on 11 sectors of cooperation between Korea and NATO, like anti-terrorism efforts, disarmament and non-proliferation, emerging technologies and cybersecurity. So beyond the commercial aspect, South Korea's security footprint is really has been quite established, building long-term strategic partnerships grounded in mutual trust.
Indeed, and I do have to say another region of the world where South Korea's defense ties extend is the Middle East, right?
That's right. So South Korea has been quietly contributing towards peace and stability in the Middle East over the past 3 decades. And it hasn't engaged in combat, but it's provided assistance in humanitarian efforts such as reconstruction and medical aid. It also plays vital peacekeeping roles with its ongoing deployments. Since 2011 to this day, the ARC unit in the United Arab Emirates provides elite training for UAE's special forces. The Dongmyeong unit in Lebanon since 2007 has been focusing on peacekeeping. They engage in community outreach and efforts to prevent clashes between Israel and the Hezbollah, as well as internal Lebanese conflicts.
Locals develop great affection for South Korean troops. It's the same in Sudan and elsewhere. Korean troops consistently perform exemplary duties in peacekeeping or other missions. In this way, our overseas deployments have played a significant role in raising Korea's international stature.
Alongside these deployments, Korea's defense exports to the Middle East have expanded sharply, from air defense systems and missile interceptors to warships and smart precision weapons.
These nations ask Korea not just to sell weapons, but to share know-how. Our defense R&D institutes actively provide advice to Gulf states like Saudi Arabia. These countries want to benchmark our R&D models, facilities, and production systems. Thus, Korea is becoming an indispensable security partner for Gulf nations, not just as an arms supplier, but as a key collaborator in building their self-sufficiency.
Seung, in a nutshell, what does this all mean for South Korea's role in the world and as security crises continue to mount globally?
Well, just as they did in the 1970s when faced with, unsurmountable challenges, Korea needs to also be very innovative and be determined as well in facing all these brand new challenges, staying ahead technologically and facing up to this new geopolitical reality. And that's going to require investing boldly in next generation capabilities, expanding multilateral security partnerships, and most importantly, staying true to the values that brought the world to its defense 75 years ago.
So I think what we share is a commitment to uphold the international legal order, a belief that we are both open, export-oriented economies. We can only, as middle powers, be who we are if we can operate in a rules-based international order. So it's up to us to uphold that, and that is, I think, the values that we share. Democracy, freedom of navigation, human rights. So these are important.
An extraordinary journey is set to come as South Korea develops as a key player in global security, Seung.
That's right.
All right, thanks for coming in today.
Thanks for inviting me again, Tammy.
Now, again, today, June 25th, marks the 75th anniversary of the outbreak of the Korean War. Even after 75 years, stories and sacrifices of war veterans continue to be recollected through efforts like these photographers who spent over a decade taking pictures of Korean War veterans. Our Kim Bo-kyung has this story.
An American war veteran with a Korean flag next to him. He is a veteran of the Korean War, one of 1,950,000 soldiers from 22 countries who fought for freedom on the Korean Peninsula. Some call it the forgotten war, but with the belief that the war and veterans' memories should not fade away, photographer Rami has been documenting Korean War veterans under an initiative named Project Soldier. Since it started in 2013, Rami has met more than 2,500 Korean War veterans recording their stories.
지금까지 2,500여 명의 참전 용사분들이 인터뷰하셨는데 특히 인상 깊었던 인터뷰가 있었나요?
All the interviews were meaningful, but Colonel William Weber stood out. When veterans see their photos that make them feel like real heroes, they often tear up and ask about the price of the frame. I usually say, I'm just repaying a small debt. But Colonel Weber told me I was wrong, that as a professional soldier, he simply did his duty, and Koreans owe them nothing.
Photographer Rami's journey to document the veterans is not just to leave their stories behind. It is to let people know the value of freedom, and that freedom is not free. Sometimes military items were used in the photos to show that.
The helmet is more than just equipment. It has a symbolic meaning of protecting peace and freedom. Each veteran wrote their name, military unit, and service time on the helmet before taking the photo, showing the lasting symbol of the freedom they helped defend.
For freedom to truly endure, the sacrifices of veterans must be remembered, a message that resonates even with soldiers currently serving in Korea. Humboldt once said he was moved by how the photos captured the deep sincerity of senior veterans' commitment to freedom.
Even for me, who's currently still serving, it has inspired me to make sure I do as good as I can every day in support of the ROC, U.S. Alliance, and UNC right now. And then I'm really hopeful that our younger generation can come and see the why life is so great here in Korea.
The photographer now aims to go beyond documenting war veterans to share the stories of those who protect our freedom today.
이분들 다음에도 자유와 나라를 지켰던 수많은 사람들이 있었거든요. 주한미군 베테랑부터 경찰, 소방관. 앞으로는 이분들과 마찬가지로 자유를 지키는 수호자들, Guardians of Freedom, 이런 사람들의 얘기를 더 얘기할 예정입니다.
김보경, 아리랑 뉴스.
Indeed, a picture is worth 1,000 words, but for some family members of our fallen heroes, putting a face to the name father is an indescribable experience. An Sung-jin has more.
Song Young-hwan. He was only 26 years old when he died on the battlefield during the Korean War. His daughter Song Jae-suk was only 3 years old. She would go to the National Cemetery to remember him, but for her whole life, she knew little about her father and was even unable to picture how he looked.
사실 3살 때 돌아가셨는데 아버지에 대한 추억이 있었겠어요. 그래서 저를 할머니가 키우셨거든요. 그래서 할머니가 늘 하는 얘기가 너 3살 때 어려서 이제 아버지가 늘 안고 다니면서 제숙 빵구 하면서 안고 다니셨대요. 그게 문득 생각나더라고요. 그래서
But after more than 70 years, she was able to see his face. While searching for an uncle who was also a soldier and had gone missing during the war, she had submitted a DNA sample. Surprisingly, she heard back from the Defense Ministry's excavation and identification team that they had matched her sample and her father's remains had been discovered.
감사함도 느끼고. 근데 또 그날 어버이날 행사 가가지고 그분을 뵈니까 아, 이렇게 기적이 있구나. 정말 그 눈물도 나고 마음도 애리고 저도 정말 이렇게 모시게 된 걸 너무 감사드리고 내가 부모님들한테 보은이라고 그럴까? 이런 걸 할 수 있는 게 이런 거 아닌가.
Song was able to receive a restored version of her father's picture through the joint efforts of the National Remains Recovery Team and the National Forensic Service, making it the first completed case of face restoration from remains from the Korean War. Using a CT scanner and 3D modeling software, the National Forensic Service reconstructs the structure of the subject's face, layering on muscles, skin, and shaping the eyes, nose, and mouth.
I had the privilege of taking part in a project that brings forgotten war heroes back to life to honor them. It gave me a deep sense of responsibility. And to help restore the image of who he was in life, we added the combat helmet and uniform that he would have worn at the time of his death.
The goal was to recreate not just a likeness, but a presence. This year marks the 75th anniversary of the Korean War, and there are still so many like Song Young-hwan that remain missing or unidentified. For many families of war veterans, it's the pain of not knowing that never fades. And through efforts like these, the return of these soldiers can become more than a historical footnote. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
President Lee Jae Myung made his way down to Gwangju City on Wednesday to take time to sit down with citizens there and hear what they had to say about pending issues in the region. Our presidential office correspondent Song Yu-jin has the details.
Communication has been one of the top priorities for South Korean President Lee Jae Myung. As part of such efforts, he held a town hall meeting in the southwestern city of Gwangju on Wednesday. Topping the items on the agenda was the long-stalled relocation of the Gwangju Air Base.
방법이야 여러 가지가 있을 텐데 오늘 최종 결론이 나지는 않겠지만 그 해결책의 단초를 한번 찾아보면 어떨까 싶은 생각이.
While the city seeks to move both the military air base and its civilian airport to Muan International Airport in the surrounding Jeollanam province, the plan has faced strong opposition from the county, largely over concerns about noise and compensation. The live televised discussion brought together key stakeholders, local government leaders of Gwangju, Jeollanam province, and Muan-gun County, as well as residents directly affected by the issue, to share their opinions.
진월동 주민 있으세요? 어떠세요, 저?
You can't really hear the planes that much in Jinwaldong.
President Lee then proposed a solution based on what he pledged during his campaign trail to directly mediate and resolve the conflict.
대통령실에서 TF팀을 만들고 최대한 빨리 속도 있게 실제 조사도 좀 하고 이 주민들도 좀 참여시키든지 외부 전문가도 좀 하고 해가지고.
The discussion then turned to boosting the southwestern region, which is made up of Gwangju and the Jeollado provinces, for balanced development across the country.
일극 체제, 수도권 집중, 대한민국 너무 집중이 많아요. 지역적으로도 집중되고 계층적으로도 집중되고 기업도 특정 대기업들로 많이 집중되는 측면이 있고. 저는 이런 집중의 문제를 일부라도 완화를 하지 않으면 이 나라의 미래가 없겠다 이런 생각이 좀 들어요.
Residents presented their ideas directly to the president, including more support for AI adoption and renewable energy infrastructure.
It's not just about buying GPUs or building data centers. We need support for hospitals, factories, and local businesses to integrate AI into their operations and build the data pipelines to make that possible.
In the final portion of the meeting, participants raised a wide range of concerns, from reforming the law school admission system, supporting small business owners, and creating more jobs for young people. Beyond the discussions, the president's visit to the region, traditionally a progressive stronghold, comes a week after he visited the conservative leading city of Ulsan in an apparent message of unity. 송유진, Arirang News.
New National Intelligence Service Director Lee Jong-suk has pledged to reduce tensions with North Korea while strengthening national security amid ongoing challenges. In his inauguration speech on Wednesday, Lee highlighted the critical state of inter-Korean relations and emphasized the need to ease military tensions and open dialogue. He also stressed the importance of advanced intelligence to address regional and global threats, particularly concerning the Middle East and U.S.-China relations. South Korea continues to see an uptick in the number of newborns. In fact, birth growth in April hit a high not seen in over 3 decades. Our Shin Se-byuk reports.
South Korea recorded its sharpest April increase in birth in 34 years. Data from Statistics Korea released on Wednesday show that 20,717 babies were born in April 2025, up 8.7% from a year earlier, marking the highest year-on-year increase for April since 1991. With this, the number of newborns has seen on-month increases for 10 consecutive months since July last year. This pushed the total fertility rate to 0.79, up 0.06 points on year. It also marks 4 straight months of gains in the average number of children a woman is expected to have. Marriage figures also stayed on an upward trend. A total of 18,923 couples got married in April, up 4.9% from the previous year. This marks the 13th consecutive month of growth, as well as the steepest April rise in 6 years. Divorces, meanwhile, fell by 5.2% over the same period. One expert, however, cautioned that the recent uptick may be temporary, driven more by demographic timing than by any meaningful change in social or economic conditions.
There are 3 key factors behind the trend: delayed marriages and childbirths due to the pandemic, and a large cohort currently in their prime age for marriage and childbirth. But this doesn't signal a fundamental shift in social conditions.
To see lasting change, the expert stressed the need to address broader challenges, including housing, education, and job stability. Meanwhile, 28,785 deaths were reported in April, up 0.8% from a year earlier. As a result, the population shrank by 8,068, marking the 66th consecutive month of natural decline. Shin Se-byuk, Arirang News.
The monsoon rain has eased off a bit in most parts of the country. The rain will mostly stop tonight, but some parts of Gangwon-do province and Chungcheongbuk-do province will continue to have rain until tomorrow morning. Until tomorrow morning, around 5 to 20 millimeters of rain is expected in Gyeonggi-do province, Gangwon-do province, northern parts of Chungcheongbuk-do province, and Gyeongsangbuk-do province, and around 5 to 10 millimeters in other parts of the country, including Seoul. As the monsoon rain takes a step back, daytime temperatures will move back up to nearly 30 degrees Celsius, mainly in inland areas. Tomorrow morning will stay warm at around 19 to 22 degrees across the country. Highs will move up to 29 degrees in Chuncheon, Gwangju, Daegu, Gyeongju, and Jeju. On Friday, more rain is expected in the Seoul metropolitan area and Chungcheongnam-do province. It will then spread nationwide on Saturday. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
That is all we have for tonight. I'm Kim Dami. For all of us here at Arirang, thanks for watching and good night.